In this video I will be giving you a tutorial of the Minolta SR-1s film camera. So if you've just recently bought one of these, or you're thinking of picking one up, or you just found one lying around in your grandparents' basement, then this video is for you. But if you don't have one of these, or you don't have any film camera from the SR series by Minolta, then this video can still be for you, because this camera is a very generic old school film camera, so a lot of the aspects and features you'll see on this, you'll most likely see on most other old school film cameras. So if you have any other film camera and you don't know how to use it, or you just want more information, this video is for you, because I will be covering every little part of the camera. So stick around and we'll get into it. So to start off with, I will go into some of the basic background information on the Minolta SR series. I will be showing you all the different aspects of the camera. I will then show you how to change a roll of film from start to finish. I will show you how to set your settings on this camera, and I will show you how to remove and put the lens back on. Now you might be just interested in a small part of the video, not the full tutorial, so if that's you, then just click on the chapters that are made below and you can just skip to the part you need. Without further ado, let's get into it. But before I do that, how are you today? How are you doing today? I hope you're well. I hope you're having a great day. I really hope you are. If you're not, I know we're like a month into the I know we're like a month into the new year, but I hope it's all day well for you. If it's not, then I hope my smiling face makes you smile, and then he's smiling, and then she's smiling, and then everyone's just smiling forever, you know? Just smile. Anyway, I know you came here for the tutorial, not to watch me chat absolute shit, so let's go. So this model was launched in 1967, and this was the final model of the Minolta SR series. It was a successor to the earlier models such as the SR, which was the original, the SR2 and the SR7. I don't know what was going on with the numbers there. The manufacturing dates for these earlier models were from 1958 to 1966. This one came in 1967, and I couldn't find the exact date, but from the information that I found, I believe that they stopped manufacturing these in 1971. Once again, I'll put the link in the description below. This camera had the highest specification from the entire SR series, with an improved shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second. So the SR series did really well for its time, because it was considered cutting edge at the time, and it was quite advanced compared to its competitors. Back then, most SLRs had a system where the mirror would drop down after the film was advanced. The new system of the immediate drop down mirror meant that the mirror would drop down immediately after exposure. That was pretty self-explanatory. I don't know why I had to explain that. So I bought this camera in July 2020, and I absolutely love it for so many reasons. One of them being is that I paid so little for it, and it was an absolute bargain, given that it was and still is in pretty much mint condition. And not only that, it came with this little cover over here, which I have not seen anywhere else, and it also came with this bigger cover which says Minolta on it. I paid £35 plus postage, so about £40 in total, and now they're going for about 80 quid just for the body itself without the lens. Not only that, most of the listings that I've seen on eBay for this camera are from Japan or somewhere on the other side of the world, so you can't even find these in the UK anymore. Moving on, let's get into the actual tutorial. So this camera is fully mechanical. There are no electronic components to this camera whatsoever. There's no slot for you to put a battery in. There's no electronic light meter at all, which in my opinion is absolutely amazing, because it makes nothing particularly easy about using this camera, which I think is the way it should be if you want to experience a traditional film camera. Alright, so we're going to start from the lens and we're going to work our way back from there. I don't know why I'm holding a pen. I feel like I'm a school teacher or something. Okay, so obviously you have the lens cap. If you look inside the lens, you'll see some basic information about the lens specifications. For example, I have a 55mm f2 lens, which was made in Japan by Minolta. Moving on, you then have the focus ring, which is the first ring you will see on the front side of the lens. And this lens basically helps you focus, so you can capture the subject, or you can capture whichever part of the scene that you want in focus. You will also notice that there are quite a few numbers on the top of the lens. It may seem quite daunting seeing all these numbers, because I know it was for me, but I promise you it's not as complicated as it seems. When you turn the focus ring, you'll see that there's two lines of numbers which move with the lens. And these are basically the distance at which you're focusing at there and then. And it tells you these numbers, and most of these cameras will tell you these numbers in feet and meters, whichever you prefer. This lens goes from about 0.55 meters all the way to 10 meters and infinity. Infinity is basically a distance far away that your camera should be able to pick up and focus. Moving on towards the back side of the lens, you will see another ring which is gotten quite stiff on my camera, but it still turns. This is your aperture. This tells you how much light is being allowed into the camera. And this lens may not be the widest, but it's still a pretty decent f2 all the way to f16. Over here you will see a white line, which is your indicator for both your focus ring and your aperture ring. Now, this is where it gets a bit complicated, and I just want to say I'm not a professional at all. I'm just an enthusiast, and I will not be going into all the details of the technicalities because there are loads of them, because the science behind this stuff is absolutely genius, and frankly, I'm not a genius. But I will give you the basic information, which is what I understand and which should be enough for this tutorial. These middle numbers between the focus ring and the aperture ring basically tell you your depth of field. If I set my aperture to f16 and I set my focus to 5 feet, which is 1.5 meters, you will see that I have a depth of field of about 80 centimeters. I'll tell you how. Because I'm on f16, I'm going to look at the 16 on this side of the lens and the 16 on this side of the lens as well. If you imagine a line from this 16 to this 16, you will look at the numbers above those two 16s. So from 1.2 meters to 2 meters, you have about 80 centimeters of depth of field. If I put my aperture at f8 and I put my focus ring at about 2 meters, which is just under 7 feet, you will see from the 8 on this side to 8 on this side that you have a depth of field about 1.75 meters to 2.5 meters, which gives you a meter in depth of field. I will link an article in the description below if you are a techie person, and you can read about this in a lot more detail. Personally, I've never actually used these numbers because I found that I've never actually needed to, but it's the professionals that would usually use this as guidance for higher quality of photos. Coming to the bottom left of your lens, you will see a small button. This is your depth of field preview. If you look through your viewfinder after setting your aperture and hold down the depth of field preview button, you will see your image getting slightly darker. This literally gives you a preview of your depth of field. You'll notice that if your lens is open wider, so to a smaller f number, that it won't make much or any difference when you look through the viewfinder. However, if you turn it up to a higher number, for example 16, you will see the biggest difference because that's when the least amount of light is being let through the camera lens, which in turn makes the image a lot darker. Moving on to the right hand side of your lens, you see these two sockets. One on top which says FP and the bottom one saying X. These are for your flash sync. Once again, I'm not going to go into the details, you can find a lot more information about this online. I've never actually used flash with film cameras. In essence, these are used for off-camera flash. Like I said, this is not an electric camera, so there's no automatic flash when you press the shutter. These are off-camera flashes. The FP stands for flat peak or focal plane sync. This is usually used at really high shutter speeds of up to 1/4000th of a second. X sync is used for a lot slower shutter speeds for about 200 to 250th of a second. So if you're looking at your camera face on, you will notice a red dot above the lens, a red dot on the right hand side of the camera, and a little knob on top of the lens on the camera body itself. The two dots and the knob I will go into more detail later, but essentially you will use these for when you are changing your camera lens. I'll put a timestamp below, so if you want to skip to the part where I'm changing the lens, you can skip straight to that. Moving on to this side, you see a little circle which has what looks like two lines on it, right? So this you can turn clockwise about 90 degrees and you can turn it back anti-clockwise 90 degrees. What that basically does is it will lock the mirror inside the camera up. Now why would you need to do that? The point behind this is that when the shutter is pressed and the mirror flips, it sends vibrations throughout the entire camera. This can cause blurs in photos when you're shooting at slower shutter speeds. Photographers will often use a mirror lockup switch to prevent that from happening. But you will notice that when you lock the mirror up, you won't be able to see through the viewfinder. And that's because the mirror is the reason why you can see through the viewfinder. And when it's locked up, there's nothing sending the light reflection through the lens and up through the viewfinder. Now when I first found out about this option, I used to think that if the lens cap is off and your mirror is locked up, then your film will be exposed because there's nothing in between the lens and the film. But that's incorrect because you have the film curtain in between the lens and the film. Moving on to the little weird looking thing on the left of the lens. This is your camera timer. It's very simple to use. All you have to do is flick it down and it locks into place. When you do that, it will reveal a little button. When you have your camera settings ready, all you have to do is press that button and the timer will start. I timed it and it's about 11 seconds and it's extremely useful, especially when you're out with friends or family and you want to get a picture, you prop it up somewhere or you get a tripod, push the lever down, press the button, 11 awkward seconds later, click. Above the timer you'll see a little rectangle and this is your mount for your off-camera equipment such as your light meter or your flash. Mine used to have a little metal sheet in front of it so you can't see these weird looking dots, but I couldn't figure out how to remove it, so I ended up breaking it off because I'm a pillock. On the far left and far right side of the camera you see these two hooks which are used for your camera strap. Mine didn't come with the camera. I paid about £7 off Amazon. Moving on to the top of the camera. Okay, this is where it actually gets a bit more exciting, okay? Because this is where you do all the stuff with your film and that kind of stuff. So on the left hand side we have the film rewind knob, which also functions as the open back knob. I will give you more information about this when I show you how to change a roll of film. Coming over to the right hand side you'll see a black knob with numbers on it. This is your shutter speed. You have this little grip which you can turn and that will basically set your shutter speed. If you listen carefully, when you change it, you can actually hear the mechanics working behind and actually changing the shutter speed inside the camera. It's really cool, but you can't hear it on camera because it's really quiet. Ooh, that was loud. So on the right hand side of the shutter speed knob, you have the main shutter function. You see a lever which is used as your main film advance lever after you take a picture. On top of this is your main shutter button which will expose the film. On the right of that you will see a small screen with some numbers and a dial. This is your shutter count. This will show you what shot you are on that roll of film. Some rolls of film will have 24 shots, some will have 36, which is why the number 24 and 36 are highlighted in red on this dial. This is extremely useful because it tells you how many pictures you're getting through and how quickly you're getting through them. Sometimes you're clicking away and all of a sudden you're more than halfway through a film. For example, if you're out on a day trip and you only have one roll of film, looking at this dial will help you plan out how many pictures you should take. Just below the shutter speed knob, you will see a red circle with a red line through it. Now for most people this has no functionality at all, including myself. What this basically shows is that if you were to get a knife and cut the camera in half exactly on that red line going through the circle, you'll see that it cuts right in front of the sensor. Now why is this useful? Professional photographers would usually use this to plan out the exact distance between the sensor and the subject. So having this line shows them exactly where the sensor is and they will measure the distance from that line to the subject to make sure that the focus that they want is perfect. If you come to the back of the camera you will see a dial which says ASA and DIN. So this dial has no functionality in terms of camera operation, but it is quite useful in remembering the speed of your film that you're currently using. Now a lot of cameras won't have this. A lot of cameras will have a slot in the back of the camera where you can rip off a piece of information which states the film speed on the cardboard box from the film packaging, and you can slot it in so whenever you're taking a picture and you're about to set your settings, you can look at the back and it reminds you which speed you're using and therefore which settings to use. So I've just bought a roll of the Kodak Professional 400TX black and white roll. Now if you're wondering what film speed or ASA is, it is basically what is commonly known as ISO. So this film that I'm currently using is a 400 ISO. I've never actually used this film before, so if you want to see a sample photo video, leave a comment below. So I'll be honest, I don't really know what the orange numbers, which is the DIN numbers are, but I'm pretty certain that they are absolutely useless in today's day and age at least. So for example, I'm using the 400 film, so all I have to do is set this to 400. So whenever I'm about to take a picture and I've forgotten what film I'm using, I'll just refer to this. So when I'm setting up my light meter, I can set it to 400 ISO and the light meter will do the rest by itself. Coming to the bottom of the camera, you will see two things. One is socket for the tripod. Two is a little button, which is essentially your film unlock button, which you use at the end of a film roll being used. And once again, I will explain how to use this in my tutorial on changing the film roll. I forgot to mention this because I thought it's fairly self-explanatory, the viewfinder. This is the screen you look through when you're setting up a picture to make sure you have the subject in frame, to make sure you have whatever you want in the frame, and to make sure that the focus is correct. Okay, now looking at the inside of the camera, you'll see a lot of random bits and bobs. So this is the main curtain inside. This is where you put your roll of film. And you can see this arm just over here. This is what will hold the film in place and turn the film when you rewind the lever. As you forward the film, you'll notice that the spool on this side will turn automatically. What that basically does is, when you advance the film goes from the original roll on this side into this roll on this side, which stays in the camera at all time. And when you finish and you press the button to unlock it, it unlocks the spool on this side, and then when you turn this all the way, that will essentially put the roll back from this side, from this spool, back into this spool, and that will make your film ready to be taken out of the camera. Now this curtain is something you do not want to touch because it's very sensitive, and as you can see, it's the main part which exposes your film. So for example, I've put my film into bulb mode at the moment, which basically it will expose the film for as long as I hold the shutter down. So as you can see, if there was a roll of film here, it would have exposed because the light would go through the lens from this side and expose the film right here. So that's something you don't want to mess with. It's incredibly sensitive and something you should keep an eye out for general wear and tear. Coming onto the inside of the film lid, you will see this pressure board, and what this basically does is presses the film against the curtain so that the exposure is perfect. This is also something you don't want to mess with because if this messes up, it can cause serious problems for your camera and your film. So to start off changing your roll of film, you need to make sure that you have finished the roll of film. As I mentioned earlier, if your roll of film has 24 shots, make sure that you reach number 24. And if your film has 36 shots, make sure that it's reached the end and it states number 36 on the little screen. Step 1. Turn to the bottom of the camera and press the small silver button. This unlocks your film and now it's ready to be rewinded back into the spool. Step 2. Turn the camera back over and lift up the middle piece of the film rewind knob. You'll see a little arrow. Turn the knob in that direction until you feel less resistance when turning and hear a click. This rewinds the entire film back into the original film spool, ready to be taken out of the camera. Step 3. Once you've done that, flip the middle piece back over and lift up the entire rewind knob. Your film is safe to be taken out. When you lift the knob up, your camera back should open and reveal your film and the insides of the camera. You will notice that when you lift the knob, the shutter count will reset back to 0, ready for your next roll of film. Pull the knob all the way up to release the roll from the arm and your film is ready to be taken out and developed. So before I get into this guys, I just want to say that if you don't have a Minolta SR-1s or a Minolta camera, you might notice that the spool on the right hand side doesn't look exactly the same as mine. That's completely fine. A lot of different manufacturers have different styles and different layouts inside, but essentially the same method applies for those cameras as well. It just looks a bit different. Some of them might have more than one slit. From what I remember, you can put the film into any of these holes and forward the film again and it will be just like normal. But if you can't figure it out and you have a different camera, then I'm sure that you'll be able to find one of many resources available online for your camera. Putting in your new roll of film is a very simple process as well guys, you need not fret. Make sure you first take out the new roll of film from the canister. You'll notice that a part of the film will be hanging out. This is the excess of the film, and this is a part that you will soon pull forward into the right hand side of the inside of the camera. So if you look at the bottom of the film, you will see two arms sticking out in the middle. These two arms will clamp on to the bottom of the film rewind knob on the inside. So make sure that this side is facing up and the part of the film that's sticking out, this will go at the bottom. After you've done that, you'll notice that bottom and the top of the film have a series of holes inside them. Now these holes will line up with the teeth on the right hand side spool. Insert your film, press in the knob to make sure that the film is in place, pull it over the teeth as such, and in the actual spool you'll see a slit. You need to slide your film into the slit and then pull your film forward. Make sure you slide your film over the curtain, the holes are lining up with the teeth, and you slide the excess, the end part of the film, into the slit onto the right hand side spool. Now forward your film a few times and you'll notice that on the shutter count screen it will go from S. You need to keep forwarding your film until it's at 1, and as soon as it's at 1, your film is ready to shoot. Once you've done this, make sure you do not open your film, because if you do that, it will expose it and ruin the entire thing. So once you follow these steps and the shutter count shows that your film is at 1, do not open the back until you finish your roll of film. You rewound it back into the original spool, then is the only time you can open the back. Otherwise, you'll ruin it. Don't do it. It's quite tempting to do it, but don't do it. Do not do it. So as I mentioned earlier guys, this camera does not come with a light meter. You can buy an additional one, but it is a bit out of my budget. The one you can attach onto the mount over here as mentioned earlier. I don't use that. What I use instead is an app literally called Light Meter, which you can download for free on Apple. I'm not sure about Android, but I know for iPhones that it's completely free, you can download it. Ads are quite annoying, but if you turn the Wi-Fi off, it works without a problem. I don't know what other people's opinions are on the app, but for me it's worked like a gem, like every single time. That's the only light meter that I've used for my camera and it's worked for me without fail. So if it's your first time shooting film, get that app. It will do you a massive favour. Unless your camera has a built-in light meter, because you do have to carry your phone around, which I mean you normally would, but you have to take it out instead of having the light meter built into this. Honestly, it's a small inconvenience which doesn't really bother me at all. So I'm going to show you live how to set camera up. You already know that your ISO is 400 because, like I mentioned earlier, the roll of film that you buy will tell you the speed or the ISO or the ASA of your film. You don't need to worry about setting that on the camera. What you do need to worry about is the shutter speed and the aperture. That's it. So my app told me that I need to set my shutter speed to 1/15 of a second, so that's what I'm going to do, and my aperture to f2. That's literally all it takes. So the combination of these two settings along with the speed of the film is perfect for the light that I'm about to shoot, which is basically my camera in front of me. So f2 means that the aperture is open quite wide, which means a lot more light can get into the camera. Shutter speed 1/15 means that the shutter will open and close a lot slower, which means giving more opportunity for light to get into the camera. And 400 is basically how exposed the film already is. Right now the setting is quite dark, so these are quite dark, and 1/15 is a very slow shutter speed, so the chances are that there will definitely be some sort of motion blur, and I'm gonna have to make sure that I hold the camera extremely still. And that's literally it. One thing I would recommend is that, say for example you're sitting outside and you turn the light meter to one scene, say a building in the distance, and then you turn it to your friend, and even though the lighting that you're in might be the same, it will not be same for the camera most likely, because when you're pointing the camera at a building in the distance, there is a lot of open space, therefore a lot more light, whereas when you're facing it at your friend who might be in front of you, there will be a lot less light because your friend will be the subject and they'll be a lot closer, hence allowing for less light to get into the camera. So bear that in mind. I have a habit of whenever I'm about to take the next picture, I just get my light meter up and just check the settings before taking the picture. Unless you know that the lighting is literally exactly the same, then you don't have to worry about it. But that comes with practice. Removing your lens from the Minolta SR-1s is extremely simple. You will see a silver knob on the right hand side above the lens. To release your lens, all you have to do is press the knob down and turn your lens anti-clockwise until the red dot on your lens and the red dot on your camera align, and your lens will come straight off. To put the lens back on, you just need to follow these steps in reverse. Line up the two red dots and turn your lens clockwise until you hear a click. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. If you have any feedback, comment or suggestions, please do leave it below. And if you learned anything new at all, then leave a like for this video because it does mean a lot. I have so much content coming up, especially photography related, so press that like button and I promise to make it worth your while. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below or you can message me on my social media. I will see you very soon, and until then, stay safe and keep smiling.